Tonight's show has an agenda. Let's learn so that we'll never do this again. What are we talking about? Well, let's take a full immersion dip into the hellhole of 1960s Vietnam. The name of the book is Digger, Dogface, Brown Job, Grunt. The author, Gary Prisk, Vietnam veteran, is with us tonight right here on Public Exposure. I'm Stan Emmert. And warning, this is rough stuff we're talking about because this is real. Gary Prisk didn't go and research Vietnam. He went there and came back. And for what the book says, he's still there. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Amazing, amazing book. And I'm not going to say amazing story. It's hard to get through. I got to tell you.
It's dense. It's intended to be violent, and it's intended to tell the truth.
There's a quote on the jacket that says, "War is hell, and you don't know the half of it." And I haven't been there, so I guess I really don't.
Not many Americans want to know the half of it. They need to know so we can stop the process.
Thank you very much for not only writing the book, for being willing to come on and talk about it, because we're going to ask some questions that might be hard, but we have to. Let's just start with the name of the book, Digger, Dogface, Brown Job, Grunt. Not something that rolls off the tongue.
They're all monikers for infantrymen from around the world. Diggers, Dogface, and Brown Jobs fought World War II. Diggers and Grunts fought in Vietnam.
What were you in? What was your service?
I was in the infantry with the 173rd Airborne Brigade in 1967, 1968, and in those 2-year periods, that 24-month period, we had 1,011 men killed.
Wow, goodness. Okay, let's just get right into it. Let's go to the first graphic. This is a quote from the book. If he dies in combat, his nickname will carry on in the hearts of his comrades. If he lives, his memoirs will joust with his guilt and keep his soul from gaining ground. Is that why you gave people nicknames?
Exactly. The first thing you lost was your Christian name. And you never got it back. You got a handle, you got a nickname. People did not really want to know you that well. You may have ended up with one good friend hooked at the hip, but we tried to hide from each other even though we were fighting together.
Yeah, I mean, you were kind of dependent upon the person next to you, weren't you, for life or death, and you didn't want to know him very well?
Well, you knew him too well, but you didn't want to be so emotional if he got killed that you didn't want to get overly close to him. You just couldn't do it.
Now, you actually were not a commander, but you were in charge of men.
I was a platoon leader for about 7 months, and then a company commander, infantry company commander for the last 5 months.
Something I found incredibly interesting were the reviews, the reviews that people put about the book. So we're going to go to the first one. We're going to use these. It says, "I was astounded by the author's grasp of the sights, the sounds, the smell, the sweat, the heat, the rain and the mud, the look, the lingo, the black humor, and of course the fear, the blood, the sickening death. This isn't a novel, it's a memoir." Is it?
I'd like to call it a novel because of some of the things that we did in Vietnam that could logically be called atrocious and or atrocities, and it's just the ugly part of war.
You talk about black humor. Here's a postcard that you received, and what does it say?
It says it's from my friend that was the platoon leader of the recon platoon in our battalion, and it says, "Hi, buddy, you're going home in a rubber bag, Mac." He sent that to me from Australia. I was deep in the mountains somewhere around Kontum, and I laughed several times over the next couple days carrying that postcard around.
You know, I don't get it. How is that funny?
Well, I mean, it was humorous to us. If you were still walking and if you hadn't died that day, it was funny. You see, the best thing I did when I was in Vietnam is I assumed I was going to die there. And once I made that assumption, being a platoon leader was a lot easier.
I don't understand.
Well, if I lived through the night and got through the dawn, when typically the North Vietnamese would try to hit you at dawn or at twilight, if you got through those periods and you started your new day, you just had to assume that this was going to be the last day you were going to make it, because there was so much going on over there in 1967, 68 that it just made being a platoon leader easier.
How about for the grunts?
Well, I don't know. Every man had to come to whatever God they created, and you never talked about another man's superstitions or his religion.
Let's go to the book. Endure the heat, the monsoon, the jungle rot, the insects and the snakes, oh yeah, and the FUO, fear of the unknown, fever of the unknown origin. That takes you over from time to time. Tell me about this.
I got fever of unknown origin. I went down in the...
Was that malaria?
No. It's unknown.
To this day?
To this day. I went down in the jungle somewhere around Khartoum and woke up in B-Med in On-K Base Camp.
Okay, B-Med?
I'm sorry, B-Medical was our main first stage hospital. Let's say if you weren't all blown apart, you ended up in B-Med. And I had a fever of unknown origin, and the doctors told me there was over 1,000 strains of malaria, and we only had drugs for 2 of them, and they had no clue what I had. So after 2 or 3 days, I just said I got to leave, and I left the hospital and went back to my unit.
Did people die of what you had?
I have no idea. I don't know. There's all kinds of veterans. A lot of veterans came down with fevers that they couldn't identify.
Okay, you talked about jungle rot. What is that for those of us?
Well, a wound that you tear open your hide, and it just never heals. There's too much heat. There's too much moisture. It's and the floor of the jungle is just. It just reeks. Vietnam had a special smell, and anyone that claims to be a veteran that doesn't know the smell wasn't there.
Let's go to another review. The reality in the pages will transport anyone who lived through that terrible time in our history and remind us of how personally invasive war is. It's a shame that we have become so deaf to the reality of war that we turn our backs to what is going on around us. Personally invasive war is he right?
Deeply scarring. Infantry combat is deeply scarring. It never goes away. My mind can replay events in single frame pictures. It can play it in fast forward. It can mix firefights into battles that I'm pretty sure didn't occur. It's so invasive that even today when I say goodbye to someone, I don't expect to see him alive again, because it's easier for me to deal with it that way.
Let's go back to the book. Delirious, he found himself screaming at a tree. When the tree screamed back, a Viet Cong soldier stood too, centered in a ball of light, his face framed in the mouth of a spider hole. Instantly he flailed through a tangle of bamboo in a blood-soaked rage. He slit the man's throat, then he slit it again. Suddenly quiet, he was lying in a wet, dank jungle in Dak To, his 4-inch K-bar dripping with blood. Was that you?
That's the fever of unknown origin, mixing events, and yeah.